This chapter is about openness and talking with your child, family, and friends about your child's beginning. Talking about embryo adoption often feels uncomfortable at first. You worry about the right way to bring the topic up and the best time to start the conversation. The benefits of openness outweighs any risks or concerns. Sharing your child's story with them and the loving act of the donors is a gift you can give to your child in an age-appropriate way when you feel that they're ready. For embryo adoptive parents, having the ability to be pregnant and experience prenatal bonding with their child is priceless. It's important to understand your own personal feelings about being pregnant through embryo adoption before you share your story. Many went through very difficult journeys in becoming parents and have mixed feelings about sharing how they became pregnant. Disclosure about your pregnancy with trusted people who are close allows a family to live in truth rather than living in secrecy, allows for sharing, encourages a child to safely question, strengthens honesty, and supports the right of the child to know about their genetics and their birth story. You may be tempted to keep how you became pregnant to yourself because you feel others may be judgmental or critical and view your pregnancy as less than had you conceived naturally. This is a common feeling and needs to be explored because how you feel will come through in how you manage disclosure in the future with your child. Keeping this information private for most is understandable and acceptable. However, keeping it from your child is another thing. Allowing your children to know of their beginnings helps to normalize it. Children need to begin understanding there are other people in the world they are forever connected to who are not in their immediate family. A clear and positive message to share with your child is telling them your donors wanted to help people who wanted to become parents, and they helped us to have you. As your child grows, they may have similar talents, interests, and personality traits as their donors and their genetic siblings. And for adopted children, that can be very important, especially as they try to figure out how they fit into the world. For each developmental stage, there are different ways to keep the adoption conversation going. For example, young and pre-adolescent children will understand the reality of their start in life and will begin to ask questions. The conversations you had up until then were the groundwork for acceptance. For preteens, keeping the lines of communication open is vital, although they may not want to talk. When they are ready to ask questions, ensure that you are comfortable talking about this and that you're okay with their questions. Adolescents will own their story, and as they work through their feelings, they may become angry and accusatory. They may want to engage in communication with the donor family to explore how different or similar they may be, which is part of figuring out their own identity. Sometimes, the grief your child may experience comes once they realize they don't share the same genetics as you. It's important to acknowledge their feelings, share your feelings that may be similar, and that you too feel sad about that. Being truthful will be the foundation that they will build the rest of their lives on. Having raised adopted children, I know that when my kids were young, they were always seeking to find connections and similarities to us. They would say their inability to understand math and being clumsy was just like me, or their ability to dance and tell jokes was just like their father. You get the picture. They would hear other family members say similar things, and because they were ours, they saw their connection with us in the same way. Over 35 years ago, when I learned we were not going to be able to conceive a child, I felt such a deep loss because I was never going to have a child. I felt like I was less than my family and friends who were getting pregnant and experiencing parenthood. I didn't know anything about adoption, and the thought had never entered my mind until my husband mentioned it. When we decided we were going to adopt, we didn't tell anyone our plans. At that time, adoption was uncommon, and when you did hear about it, it was generally negative and judgmental. Once we decided to adopt, we were unsure if we would be supported and accepted if we were open with others. When we did finally share our plans, we met with negativity and skepticism, which didn't provide a strong platform for openness, so we decided to keep the details to ourselves. Only our parents and closest friends knew we were trying to adopt. When our daughter came into our lives, we were amazed that she shared the same blood type as mine, and she looked remarkably like my husband as an infant. A well-meaning family member suggested that we keep her adoption a secret and say she was our biological child because we could easily pull it off. I won't lie, for a brief time, we considered this. The need to look like a normal family was strong, and we didn't know if our baby would be celebrated or ridiculed. We thought of the pros and cons to keeping this huge secret. Again, this was because of the taboo nature of adoption that still existed in the early 80s. Media was still portraying adoption in a negative light, and there were movies and shows about birth parents being scammed or birth mothers changing their minds, etc. We were told it might be easier for our child if we just kept the secret and allowed our daughter to just be ours. Although we had no understanding of adoption issues at that time, in our heart we knew that it would be wrong not to tell her, and starting out in life in a lie is harmful, as is keeping secrets. Where I'm going with this is no matter how easy a solution withholding the truth would be to avoid discussing the hard stuff with your child, it really is in your and your child's best interest to be truthful about how your child came into your life. Honesty in a family is vital, and if secrets are kept, there are always worries about the truth coming out, which is stressful and difficult to maintain. Always use positive adoption language when talking about your child's beginnings, not only with them but with family and friends. Start discussing their story when you first come home with them from the hospital in an age-appropriate way. Always be honest and open. Express gratitude and excitement about how they came into your life, and realize that adoption discussions are ongoing. Waiting until they're older to introduce how they came into your family may lead to the child having feelings of betrayal. If a child feels that the truth was kept from them until they reached a certain age, then it must be something to be ashamed of. As they mature, notice I did not say get older because this would be based on maturation level and not their age. It's important to share more details to their story and some of the details of the journey to having a child. When you feel your child is ready, discuss their donor relatives and how they're related and may have things in common because of genetics. Your child will go through developmental stages where they'll question more about their identity and belonging. You can practice how to address being adopted with your child and how they will address their beginnings with others. Remember, your child may face questions, especially if they're not the same ethnicity as their parents, so practicing what to share and with whom to share their story is important. Consider creating 3 scenarios with your child: what they will share with close friends, people who were just acquaintances, and total strangers. Preparation of what to say will help normalize and lessen anxiety that comes from being questioned. Every adopted child should be able to talk about their beginnings, even when the child resembles the parents and it's not evident that they're not genetically connected. When she was little, I wondered how I would discuss adoption with my daughter, so I looked for books about adoption. I found one adoption story about a character on Sesame Street, but that was it. During the first few years, I thought about how she would understand and accept being adopted. When she was 3 years old, a teachable moment occurred that I took advantage of. Although we used the word adoption from the time our daughter was placed in my arms, we really didn't know how much she understood, and she connected the word to her story. A family friend's cat had kittens, and we decided to adopt one. As we talked about the kitten with our daughter, I saw this as a way to include adoption in a way that was relatable, natural, and positive. On the way to see the kittens, we talked about the mommy cat and how she had carried the kittens in her tummy until they were born, and after they were born, how she took care of them by feeding them and grooming them and teaching them how to be a cat. Now that the kittens were much bigger and stronger, she wasn't able to take care of them any longer. We talked about how kittens, like young children, need to be taken care of all the time, and that they needed a human mommy or daddy to help them by giving them a home, protect them, take them to the doctor, and making sure they had everything they needed to be healthy and safe. Once we got there and chose our kitten, my daughter kissed the mommy cat and thanked her for the kitten, who was now named Nikki, and promised to take good care of her forever in our family. On the way home, as she held Nikki in her arms, we talked about what happened, and I smiled as I heard her use the word adoption, which she now had a connection to and better understanding of. That was the start of many conversations about adoption throughout her childhood. You'll find your story when you feel the time is right to share with your child.